who am I to be successful? Who am I to start a business? My identity was really the thing that was going to keep me back in business. They're going to figure out that I don't deserve to be here. They're going to figure out that I'm not smart enough, I'm not advanced enough, I'm not experienced enough. There are people who will get uncomfortable about you being successful. I had to be consciously willing to make other people uncomfortable. Am I playing small within my business? Am I playing small within my life? If I grow and if I expand and if I really tap into that level of ambition and success and achievement that I see for myself, will people still love me? Hello and welcome back to the Ambitious Podcast. I am so excited for today's topic because this is something that I know so many women struggle with, and even myself I have struggled with, which is this idea of, am I playing small within my business? Am I playing small within my life? And I think obviously you listening to this are listening to the show because you are, just like this show's name, you are ambitious, you are driven. And I think a lot of the things that I see in many women is them asking themselves and reflecting on whether they are ambitious enough sometimes. Am I pushing enough? Am I growing enough? Am I being seen enough? And so you ask yourself questions like, what if I am meant for more and I'm wasting time right now? Or you ask yourself, why do I keep playing safe or keep playing small when I fully know that I am capable of more? Am I too much within what I'm doing in my life or business? Or maybe am I enough? Is this enough? And questions also with, if I, and this is one that I struggled with a lot, if I grow and if I expand and if I really tap into that level of ambition and success and achievement that I see for myself, will people still love me? Will people still be interested in, being in a relationship with me, being my friend? Like, can I potentially grow too much that I outgrow my environment so much that I have to leave everything behind in order to achieve the thing that I want? And so today's topic was really inspired by so many conversations that I have with women, who are peers, who just are, again, going for big, big things in their life. It's inspired by conversations I have with clients about their ambition and their drive and trying to understand what is too much, what is too little, and trying to navigate that spectrum. And it's honestly very much motivated by, as well, my experience of business and of life and wondering what is too much and also what is not enough for what I know I am capable of and what's possible for me. And so today, we're going to dive into a couple different things. We're going to start off with giving you some signs and some almost alarms I want you to think about, or symptoms that are going to come up in your business or in your life that really are a sign or an indicator to you that you are playing small. I want to help you to basically have an assessment to go through your life, your business, your mindset and say, am I falling into this bucket? Am I somebody who is the victim of playing small? I also want to unpack, why do we play small? Where does playing small in our business or in our life kind of come from? Why do we end up, minimizing ourselves from what we know we're capable of and what we can achieve? And I also want to give you some questions to reflect on how playing small is actually showing up for you. I also, though, don't want to just give you a checklist of things that are going to help you to identify, yes, I am playing small, but I also want to give you a way to overcome that. I also want to give you some steps and some action items that you can take that will help you to really know how to stop playing small and fully step into the potential that you know is possible for you. So listen, oftentimes, like many things in our mindset and many things in business, we kind of can't see the forest from the trees, right? Because we're so deep in it. And so one of the things that I find really valuable for myself in business and in life is being able to have questions I can ask myself, or self-assessments in a way that allow me to say, okay, do I feel like any of that resonates with me? And if it resonates with me, it usually is a starting point of change for me. Because oftentimes, we're so resistant to someone saying, hey, you're playing small in your business. So if I said to you who's listening, you're playing small in your life, you're playing small in your business. Your first reaction might be, well, no. And you start to minimize it. You start to say, well, do I resonate with that? Do I agree with that label? But the thing that I've realized in business is that sometimes we're not quite ready to accept this label. We're not quite ready to accept the diagnosis of, hey, you're playing small. But instead, we might be ready to have a self assessment of the symptoms. It gets us to this place of, okay, well, if all of these symptoms fit for me, there might be some truth here. And so the thing that I know, and this was something that was passed on from a mentor to me, and I love the basic, you know, application of it because it's so easy to integrate, which is if something lands for you, if you feel like something tickles in you, like when I say some of these signs and if you're like, "Oop, I feel a little bit called out right now." I feel like Kate kind of, somehow knows what I'm up to over here. If there is an aspect of that that's coming up for you, there's a reason. And the tickle test is what he called it. The tickle test is basically this idea, or some people call it the trigger test. If it triggers you, if it tickles something inside of you, there's a reason. And that's because it hits a chord with you. You have an aspect, even a small, tiny amount of that helps you to know that actually kind of might be true for me. And that's the starting point of change. It brings us, we've done in other episodes, this model of the stages of awareness, right? And the stages of, competence and the stages of awareness. And what happens is when you're going through and you say, yeah, that sign fits for me today, or that one doesn't fit for me, what's going to happen is you're actually adjusting your understanding of awareness of playing small. So I want you to kind of go in and ask yourself, as I list these out for you, what do these feel true for me? And if you feel like you have one or even multiple that feel true for you, it's an opportunity to get curious. It's an opportunity to say, okay, well, I'm curious. Am I playing small? And this is going to help you to diagnose that. So I want to first talk a little bit about how this shows up from a mindset perspective, right? Because a lot of us typically will attribute playing small to being a mindset thing. Oh, it's the mindset of me playing small. So one of the things that I see is people who avoid visibility. You literally avoid being seen. You don't want to necessarily show up online fully authentically or too much. You feel like you kind of, are resistant to speaking publicly. So you don't love, being seen, for example, even on something as small as a group call, right? Or you don't believe that you have the ability to be seen by masses of people. And oftentimes, people who are playing small struggle to market themselves because they don't feel comfortable to be seen by other people. I also see, especially when it comes to mindset, and this is a very, very big indicator, especially among scaling women, is you will downplay your wins. The amount of women that I have talked to who say, yeah, I did sign my highest contract ever, but, it wasn't X amount. Or I did, yeah, hit that marker, but like I was hoping to do more. Like they instantly have this thing that they're excited about for 30 seconds as an achievement. And then as soon as they have the awareness that they've slightly noted to it, they downplay the rest of it and it instantly becomes insignificant. And so they really avoid celebration and oftentimes, to be honest, even avoid sharing wins. You're not comfortable sharing wins. You feel uncomfortable celebrating yourself. I also see women from a mindset perspective really struggling and questioning their value, their pricing, their legitimacy as a business owner. I see a lot of the times that they're second guessing everything. They believe that there is this true, one way or right way of doing things. And so because of that, you're second guessing every decision. And most obviously is when someone is setting very low or low value goals. And what I mean by that is like every goal that they set is often rooted in this idea of it being, to be honest, a safe goal. It's not really stretchy. It's not something that's going to push you outside your comfort zone. It's a very safe goal because when you do the stretch goal, it pushes you and it scares you. And it means that by setting that stretch goal, you would actually have to step into your potential. And that's something that makes you uncomfortable. So instead, we will set safe, approachable goals as the way we do goal setting. And part of it is actually an indication of you really playing small. Now, this also influences decision making and also strategy aspects as well. So, one of the ways that I see a lot of playing small is also getting so stuck in the weeds of over planning, over conceptualizing, over strategizing. You're somebody who is researching constantly and you're planning constantly, but you're under implementing. You're not taking action. You're not actually moving the pieces and getting action and movement into the goals that you have. And also, a very clear indicator is this hesitancy, again, around movement and action, also correlating into people getting support. And this doesn't necessarily mean just as a business coach for something like me as an investment. It can also be in hiring team to support. It can be in hiring consultants to support you. It can be hiring agency to support. It really is a hesitancy in investing into the business because again, that would be correlated to it growing and continuing to expand. So there's like this comfort level in keeping it the way that it is right now. And there's often I kind of when we went back to, questioning your value as a mindset, because of that, the action around that is oftentimes people undercharge. You're underpricing for what it is that you offer and what you provide. Even though you know it's exceptionally valuable and can really help and change people's lives, you really undervalue what you bring to the table. And you price, to be honest, based off of fear. You price off of this concern and worry. Is that too much? Are people going to pay that? Am I asking too much of my pricing? And you make a lot of assumptions around fear rather than actually evaluating your business and your offerings based off the value that you provide. And so there's a lot around the strategy bucket that will come up. But the other thing that we also know is that this also is not untouched when it comes to your leadership and your team. There's also oftentimes the person who's playing small really refuses to delegate. They refuse to build a team. And even when they are overwhelmed and you are burnt out and you're like, I don't have any more in me because I feel like I'm working nonstop, you still have a resistance to delegation and you still have a resistance to hiring. And even when you hire, you may be at a place where you kind of micromanage. You're not really trusting others with your business. And you feel like, and I often hear this, and this is something that for some of you may be very triggering. I often hear, no one can do it like me. Like I've tried to hire, I've tried to get people in the business, but I just really struggle to find somebody who can do what I do. And so when you are building your team or when you're working even with clients, there's often this struggle because you are burnt out because you're doing everything alone. And then you also are struggling to hire because you feel like no one can do what you do. And even when you hire, you're kind of holding the reins very tight because you don't believe someone can fully step in and take over. And the other thing that I also see is people who have lack of boundaries. So you are somebody who is not enforcing boundaries, for example, with clients, you're not enforcing boundaries with team, and you often let the environment dictate how you operate the business. So we can see here that there's a lot of indicators of quote unquote playing small. Now, the last being excuses. And this is something I see in a lot of different buckets. We have excuses around how much time you have. You have excuses around how much money or the circumstances of the market or internally within the business or your team. There's a lot of reasons why you can't grow. There's a lot of reasons why you can't scale. And another thing that comes up around that as well is procrastination, right? Where we constantly see people making excuses as to why they have to push off the launch of a new offer or, oh, I have to rebrand again. I need to rebrand and, really establish the branding, or I need to, get more clarity and do more planning before I do it because only then will I actually be ready to take action. And I would say of all of it, the thing that I know is one of the top symptoms or indicators of any clients that I work with is comparison. And this is when you are constantly looking at what are other people doing? What are they integrating? What are they doing as a strategy? What is their approach? Instead of owning your unique abilities, owning your unique vision, owning your unique plan. And I find comparison is such an entry point for me for most people around where their mindset's at, because when someone really really struggles with comparison, it's an indicator of lack of vision, lack of trust in themselves. Because I'll be honest, I And I'm very blessed in this way, and it's not something that I'm saying from a high horse, but I think it's been something that's helped me so much as a skill in business, is I realize that, like, I don't need to look at what other people are doing. I don't need to see what did so and so do as their offer, how is that person marketing, how is that person branding. Frankly, it's irrelevant to me. If I'm doing market research around my industry, it's different, but I'm not scrolling on social media being like, "Ugh, so and so's doing this. Should I do that?" Or like, "They price their offer this way. Should that affect my pricing?" Right? So, like, there's market research and then there's comparison. And the thing that I explain to clients, they say, "Well, what's the difference? If I'm consuming my competitor, I can say, oh, I just like am consuming them because I want to see what they're up to." I said the difference between market research and comparison is the emotion that you feel when you consume your competitor. If I'm doing market research on my competitor and I'm looking at their reels or I'm looking at their offer, their mastermind or their coaching or their intensives or events, whatever it might be, and I am consuming them, I go through their stuff and I'm like, interesting. Okay, great. That's good information. And I go about my day. That is very different than me going to my competitor's page and be like, oh, her branding, her price is higher than mine, or oh, her price is lower than mine. Why? And I start to kind of get into this emotional reaction consuming a competitor. Comparison is not about whether you consume, it's about the emotion that you have after or during your consumption. And so that is something I want to just give as a distinction, because I know many people will say, well, I do consume my competitors and like I watch them, I support them. And hey, like I am aware of who my competitors are and I give them their flowers and I root them on. But I'm not emotional about anything they're doing because really it doesn't impact me. And I find that the playing small, we stay small because we believe that maybe our vision is not enough or what we desire for our business is not enough, or maybe it's not right because so and so is doing this. And so I find that comparison one, if I could label one indicator of something I see of people who play small, people who compare often compare because of lack of confidence. And when you lack confidence in yourself and your business, you're going to ultimately, because of lack of confidence, play small because you're questioning everything. You don't trust yourself. You don't have a real vision of where you're going that's not influenced by other people. And because that, you're questioning every piece. So when you're questioning every single piece, it's very difficult to build. It's very difficult to scale. So I just want to accentuate that one because it was a really important one when it comes to understanding the indicators of playing small. Now, say we're listing that off and say we're going through all this, right? And you're like, okay, some of that feels true for me. Maybe I am, scared of showing up and I feel like I am afraid to be seen. I know I have the possibility to achieve more, but I don't really feel comfortable to tap into that. I do struggle with comparison. I do feel like I lack boundaries, or maybe I am undercharging or scared to increase my prices because I wonder, will it be received well? Is that too much? If we feel like we see ourselves within this, the question is like, why are we like this? Right? Why do we have this tendency to play small? Where does it come from? And so there's a couple different root causes as to why we play small. And listen, if you guys know me, you know that I am a data nerd and I'm also somebody who I find for myself, I love mindset, but part of the reason that I love mindset is the psychology basis underneath it. And I want to understand, why am I the way that I am? Or why do I struggle with XYZ? Where does it come from? And so we've had a lot of guests even on this show who've talked about, childhood trauma and talked about the subconscious. And so I find that once I have an understanding of the root of where something comes from, it gives me context as to how I can fix it. And so what I want to do is break down a couple of the different psychological principles that are the reason we will fall into the pattern of playing small. And I want to share this because I think sometimes, back to again these symptoms and hey, I'm diagnosing myself, I'm somebody who's playing small. The thing that I don't want is for you to blame yourself. I want you to use this information to better understand yourself so that you can use this as empowerment to change. One of the reasons that I'm such a big advocate for therapy is because when we start to give context and understanding of who we are, we're able to then take that level of awareness and empowerment and choose to change. And so that's what we're going to dive into now, is going into, okay, well, what are the root causes of why I am someone who's playing small? One of them for sure is the fear of failure. So, this from a psychology perspective is actually called loss aversion, which is where our brain is actually wired to avoid loss more strongly than it seeks gain. Okay. So, this means that your body, your mind, from a psychology basis, is literally wired to see taking bold action as feeling risky. And what it does is it's wired to help you to avoid failing. Your body, your actual internal mechanism is keeping you from avoiding failure. And so this is important because we often will see that people believe it is better to stay unseen than to risk being seen and failing. And this is, to me, unlocked a lot because it allowed me to see that, okay, this is not just because I'm not driven. It's not because I'm not ambitious. It's not because, I lack the motivation to go for big things, but my actual internal wiring in my mind and in my body is wired to keep me from failing. So I have to consciously, which again is why we talk so much about conscious and subconscious, I have to consciously decide that I am going to plant different wiring to be able to get a different outcome, to be able to achieve different results. Because I know that even though my mind is doing all this to protect me, we know that speaking on a stage is not the same in the fight or flight feeling as being chased by a tiger. So while our brain has that operating system because we have it from being chased by a tiger, it's not necessarily the thing that is going to work in our favor when we're trying to, for example, get into public speaking or when we're trying to charge that new price. Even though the feeling in our body registers and triggers the same response, it's not applicable the same in those instances. So we have to consciously choose that we're going to fight back to that natural response within us, in our brain, in our body, and start to decide by understanding where it comes from what we want to do differently. So this can be, for example, when we think about failing, we think about, the shame that comes with failing, potentially even financial implications of failing. We think about also confirmation of self-doubt. If you are somebody who has any ounce of doubt within you and you fail, quote unquote fail at something, oftentimes we use this as evidence to say, see, if I wanted to go charging that higher price and that was something that I really wanted to do, see, they didn't close. It's too much. We use these little aspects as evidence to show us that we're trying to play too big. And so we have to be really conscious about where we collect that evidence and what we take of that to be true and what we take it to mean for us. Because if we're not careful, we'll actually use that as a reason to play small versus using it as an indicator to say, you know what, yeah, that person didn't close, but they also didn't close for the other rates that we used to charge, right? So that kind of keeping us, and again, loss aversion, that keeping us from failure, that helping us to avoid loss, avoid failure is something we have to be conscious of. Now, there's actually on the contrast, though, very, very common among scaling women, is there's also this aspect of fear of success. And I know that when I say this on calls, or I've said this on other people's podcasts, or I've even done this in trainings in our programs, people are like, Kate, who's scared of having a 7-figure business? Who's scared of making $500,000 a year? Like, is that actually something that people fear? And it is, because this is actually taken as a principle from the book, The Big Leap. And it talks about the upper limit problem, which is where success can threaten someone's self concept or their relationships, i.e., if I grow and if I achieve too much, people might leave me. So, because of that, there's this discomfort that happens in standing out. There's a discomfort that happens in outgrowing your environment and ultimately potentially having the possibility of being envied by people. So, what ends up happening is, as women and as business owners, we self sabotage. When things start to go well, we ask ourselves, like, who am I to have this? Who am I to achieve this? And it's something I talk a lot about, especially with private clients, because we have a very intimate dynamic in our coaching and in our mentorship. And one of the things that we talk about a lot is the fact that when you're going to go for big, big, big goals, especially those of you who are wanting, and see on your vision board for yourself, having the multiple 7-figure business, that's going to come with a lot of change. And so it's not to say that I'm going to say, well, I don't care about any of those things. I had to as well process this fear of being successful because I worried that if I became successful, my friends wouldn't want to be friends with me anymore. Or I thought if I became successful, would people feel like I was relatable? Would they feel like they could connect with me? I worried about being successful because I even saw in small instances the difference in how people would interact with you. So, for example, going out with a group of people and those people knowing how much money I made and seeing how that impacted the way that they might assume that I would cover the bill, for example. Or even going out somewhere and they're kind of, again, once someone understood what I did or maybe started following me on social, started seeing me talk about the growth of our business, people assuming how much I, for example, at a certain place that I would go to would tip because of understanding how much I made. And so even these little, again, back to evidence, these little pieces made me worry about, okay, well, do I want to grow more? Like, do I want to be seen as different? Do I want to outgrow my environment? And it was something that wasn't initially a conscious choice. It was something that I was just like heads down, building, scaling the business. But then I started to see as I grew and as our financials also grew, that people were kind of, I would say, adjusting their behavior to me. And so I recognized that if I was going to go for really big things and if I was going to achieve really big things in business and in life, I had to be consciously willing to make other people uncomfortable. And what I mean by that is I had to be okay that my ambition and my drive may not sit good for other people, but that didn't make it wrong. And I had to ask myself, is me having a certain person in my life going to be the reason that I don't achieve? And then the follow up became to that, why is that person not in my life as a byproduct of wanting to achieve? And truthfully, if I could be candid about it, I do think there's an aspect that there are people who will get uncomfortable about you being successful. There will be people who get uncomfortable about you achieving and going for massive big things in your life. There are going to be people who are uncomfortable that you're doing things that they wish or desire to do. So when you go and you step into that ambition and you step into the success and that high level person that you know you can be, and you're kicking ass and you are doing things both business and in life. This can be you going for a big financial milestone, and it also could be you, deciding to run a marathon. Both those goals are going to make people uncomfortable because they look at themselves. And so the person who you want to grow with is the person who supports you in like, yes, go for it. As long as you are a good human and it is not changing your heart and your values are in the right place, go for it. And so it's really about asking yourself, am I playing small because I'm comfortable with my friend circle? I'm comfortable with the ways that I'm being treated. I'm comfortable in my current environment. And if I grow, there's a possibility that my environment, my friends, my people around me might change. And you know what? You're right. They might change. But the question that I ask is, are those friends that I want to have around? And so if I could put it simply, if I have a friend with me right now and I decide that I want to go have an 8-figure business, do I want to have friends that want me to stay small in order to be friends with them? And if so, that's a question that you have to be able to answer for yourself. For me, I said no. I want friends around me who push me to do more, who push me to achieve my highest potential. And I would want to look at this as an opportunity to evaluate success. What does success mean to you? And what are fears that you have around becoming successful? And is there a possibility, and you'll know this to be true in your heart, is there a possibility that you're staying small in your business because, frankly, you don't want to change your environment? You're comfortable with how things have been in your life. You're comfortable with your social circle. And you fear that if I go too big, I might not resonate with these people anymore. And that's, again, a personal decision that you have to make and questions you have to ask yourself. Now, another thing that we know is that there is also an underbelly of playing small that is cognitive dissonance. So this is really where imposter syndrome comes in, because we have this self-perception, which is that like I'm not qualified. And it clashes with the external evidence of getting clients, and the brain is trying to resolve that tension. So you've got on one side, I'm not qualified. And on the other side, you've got success of sales closing. So you're like, how does this make sense? So instead of adjusting our perception, meaning that you are qualified, instead of moving our mindset from I'm not qualified to I'm qualified, what ends up happening is we will pull back our action, we will pull back our behavior to match our old identity. So we have this belief that people are going to find out that I'm actually not as good as they think. And I will say, this is something this is something that I struggled with massively in scaling my business. I went to a conference and I was asked to speak about marketing. And I have never felt this. I've never felt such an intensity around not taking up space. I was going first in the sense of the order in that day. And I was going first, and then there's another speaker after me. And the speaker after me had been involved in billion-dollar businesses. Like we were talking with a B, my friends, okay? B, $1 billion businesses. Had helped some of the biggest brands that literally probably sit on the shelves in your kitchen and in your cabinets today. And here I am, little old Kate in my brain then, going on stage, and I have to talk about marketing before what I consider to be like the NFL player, the OG, is coming on to talk about marketing right after me. And in that moment, I think they're going to figure out that I'm not good. They're going to figure out that I don't deserve to be here. They're going to figure out that I'm not smart enough. I'm not advanced enough. I'm not experienced enough. I had all of the things go through my head. And I was physically sick. Like when I tell you, I literally was like, how the heck do I get out of here? Talk about fight or flight. I wanted to get the hell out of there because I didn't believe that I deserved to be there. Even though I had so much evidence, I was asked to be, let's remember the evidence here. I was asked to be on the same stage as this person. That alone should have been the evidence that I needed, that I deserved to be there. But me being invited to come speak here wasn't evidence. Yet me, having this person who was an incredible speaker and business owner say, hey, your talk was amazing. I took notes. Nope. Kate in her mind was still like, I don't deserve to be here. I'm not good enough. I feel so uncomfortable. I'm embarrassed. I feel like I don't know anything. I feel like this is not valuable. I had all of the spirals happen. And so what I realized was my identity was really the thing that was going to keep me back in business. And once I started to have a heart to heart with that speaker, and I got down and literally sat down and had dinner and just kind of relaxed after this, everything was done and my nerves had settled, and they told me that they took notes on my talk, I thought, okay, this is a really bizarre feeling. And I said to him, I don't feel worthy of being on the same stage as you because I know how successful you are. And I said I was so nervous, I was so anxious, and I took it to mean all these things. And what I realized was he had said to me, it's not because you're having imposter syndrome and it's not because you don't deserve to be here. The reason you're feeling this way is because you care. You care about the information you're teaching being valuable. You care about the fact that you help people in the audience. You care about impacting people. You care about them having a good time. You care about them getting their questions answered. So we have to be careful as well that care doesn't translate to lack of confidence. Again, going back to what we said at the beginning, not taking certain things for how we feel or the things that are coming up. But in that moment, it was so apparent to me that even though I had all this evidence to say that and even for me saying this, it still makes me to this day feel uncomfortable. Even though I have so much evidence to say that I'm great at what I do, and even though I have so much evidence of client results and, clients building multi-million dollar companies and growing to 7 figures in 3 calls and, these great speakers taking notes on my talks, even saying this makes me uncomfortable, which is why I'm telling you, I'm not telling you this from a high horse. I'm telling you this because I still have awarenesses today, but I recognize that if I don't shift and constantly tap into my identity and acknowledge what makes me uncomfortable, acknowledge the narratives that I have, acknowledge where I'm keeping myself small, if I don't acknowledge it, I can't possibly take action to overcome that. And so what I've now done is understood that my self-perception is going to be the reason that I stay small because I have so much evidence Just like, again, remembering cognitive dissonance is the disconnect between who we believe to be versus who we truly are. And so while yes, there can be, this evidence for you in your business that so many things are working, or so many things are telling you that you are going to be successful, that you are going to achieve, if you don't actually believe it, you will not achieve any of it. You will literally self-sabotage to keep yourself small because your identity has not caught up with the evidence that you have from your business or from your life. And so it's aligning the identity with the action and the execution that's really essential for long-term sustainable growth. Now, the other thing that we also know that is talked about a lot within cognitive behavioral therapy is low self-worth and understanding what our core beliefs are. And so we also have these deep-rooted beliefs oftentimes when we play small that I'm not enough or success is not for people like me. And so what ends up happening is that we actually are going to start to operate from avoidant behaviors. So the beliefs we have are often shaped by our childhood and the childhood experiences. We have societal messaging that's impacting us. We have cultural norms that are impacting us. And sometimes we truly believe that it is safer not to try than to confirm that I am, in fact, not good enough. And one of the things that I will share a story of that kind of, came up for me around this and how it impacted me playing small was that I wouldn't say, I grew up in a middle class family. So I also want to acknowledge the privilege that comes with that. But I wouldn't say for me, it wasn't that money was ever not a topic in our house. Like, I wouldn't say that, money was ever flowing and it was a non-conversation by any means. And so because of money being such a big thing within my childhood, I, to be honest, never really thought that I would be somebody who would build wealth or who would build or be able to have abundance of money, because I didn't come from abundance of money. So I thought, who am I to be successful? Who am I to start a business? First off, but second, who am I to have a successful business? Who am I to make lots of money when I don't come from money and money's always been something that's been difficult? And on the flip side, I also had this around education. I do not have a degree in business, and yet I help people build multiple seven-figure businesses. So I had a lot of, belief again around childhood experiences that when I was a child or when I was a kid, I was passed along from my parents that like education was your credential. Education was the thing that determined your value. So like I came from a very education based family. Like everybody went to school, everybody went to university and got degrees. And so there was conversation about like, was I going to be an optometrist? Was I going to be a doctor, a lawyer? Like it was very much about education. So when I then go in and I'm having this success in my business and I'm seeing this growth happen and I'm like, okay, whoa, this is something that I'm like, I can't be successful at this because I'm not educated. So like I cannot, as someone who doesn't have all these degrees, possibly have success and movement in this because I don't have the credentials to back that up. So like for people like me slash people who don't have degrees in business, I can't teach business. Because again, cognitive behavioral therapy will tell us that the childhood experiences impact our beliefs, but we have to be aware of what those beliefs are. One of the parts I love about therapy is understanding, what have I been programmed with? We want to remember that when we, come into this world, we don't have beliefs about what is right or wrong. We don't have beliefs about what is true or not. Instead, those are things that are given to us. The two things I talk about all the time is the fact that a lot of our mindset and our belief systems are one of two things. They are either caught or they are taught. So they're actually more caught than they are taught. But you watch your parents and what they believe to be true about money, what they believe to be true about success, what they believe to be true about growth. And so if you don't understand the programming and frankly the things that you have picked up along the way, you might not again be consciously aware of how those are impacting you playing small and you keeping yourself where you are. And so the thing that we also know is that things are taught to us, which is again, things that your parents used to say. For example, one of the things that was something small, but it was just, again, no ill intent. It was just something that came from my parents was the fact that money doesn't grow on trees. That was something I remember being said all the time as a kid. We would leave the lights on in the house or we would like, leave the water running, whatever it might be. And they would say, hey, close the door. The air conditioning's on. Money doesn't grow on trees, or we're not paying to heat the outdoors. Or, for example, the water's running, money doesn't grow on trees. That idea of money is not in abundance was always something that I learned in childhood. So because of that, it's such a small thing, right? We think, okay, well, that's just a small comment my dad said, or it's such a small comment my mom said. But that has an underbelly of beliefs. It has an underbelly of a core value there, which is the fact that money is not in abundance. So those have a way of working themselves into our mind and then showing up in the way that we approach our life and our business today. And we have to be conscious of what those are so that we can kind of start to decide for ourselves versus just what our programming came with, what we actually believe to be true, and also rewiring that, because if we don't, we're really capped by a loop of programming that's going on in our subconscious, i.e., 95% of our brain. If we don't actually unpack what did my mom or dad say to be true about success? What did my parents say about wealth or building money or abundance or resources that are available to us? Like, what was the belief? Do I believe that to be true? And if I don't believe it to be true, what is my truth? What is my belief around that? Now, the other last two that I will say is there's also another psychological principle that's called maladaptive cognitive distortions, which basically is that many entrepreneurs fear doing something imperfectly, so they don't do it at all. So this is really where playing small feels like your ability to be able to control the situation. So like, I'm going to wait till I have it all figured out is actually connected to, if I can't do it properly, I'm not going to do it at all. So when we play small, oftentimes we are more in the driver's seat than if we went big, because by going big or going for big goals or setting those big targets or those stretch objectives for you, that would be connected to you potentially having an aspect of lack of control. And so because of that, if we're like, well, no, I need to be able to control it, because if I can't control it, it won't be perfect. And if it's not going to be perfect, I don't want to do it. There's this fear of the mess. There's this fear of the uncertainty. There's this fear of the unknown. And it keeps us in this loop of perfectionism. Perfectionism is a very, very easy telltale sign of somebody who plays small, because you feel good when you can control all the environment around you. You feel good when you feel like, okay, everything is good in my business, in my life. It's not stretching me. And that's because I can control it. So if I can control it, everything is safe and I am safe. If I say, okay, great, go for the stretch goal, you're like, I can't control how that's going to unfold. I can't control what that will become. I can't control the success or the perfection of that. So, no, I'm good. I will wait until I get to a place of control. I will wait until I can really be certain that I'm in the driver's seat. And that ultimately, 9 times out of 10, keeps you from taking any action. Okay, so I want to take a quick little brief interruption from today's episode to let you know about something really exciting. And I want to first preface, there is nothing here that I have to sell you. This is about something that is entirely free that I think would be a massive support for you if you are someone who's loving all things ambitious podcast. So we have created an absolutely incredible community that is called the Ambitious Network. This is really a place where coaching and masterminds meet high-level networking of other women who are just like you. So a little bit of what you can anticipate. This is a place for you to grow, to connect, and ultimately to get the support that you need to elevate your business. And so some of the things you can anticipate inside. Number one, live hot seat coaching. This is literally live coaching in the way that I would do inside of our masterminds and our different offers, only inside of this community, entirely free. You'll also get the opportunity to get access to exclusive giveaways that are not available anywhere else. So these are things like giveaways of different books and resources that I'm obsessed with that have really helped me in my journey of business, but also things on a larger scale, like some of which have been 6 months of private coaching type of giveaways. So all of this to be said, massive, massive amount of resources being given inside, and also trainings and resources, tools of frameworks and downloads and worksheets and masterclasses that are going to be things that will really help to take you and your business to the next level. Now, it's also not just about me. I have an incredible network and a community of other entrepreneurs who also want to give back to you if you've loved their interviews and their discussions on the Ambitious podcast. So we have guests that are also providing resources in the community that will only be available inside the Ambitious Network. But there's also the networking aspect. And this is a place for you to not only connect with other women about what's going on in your business, what's currently working or not working in today's current market. It's a place to share wins, but it's also a place to connect with me and get my feedback and support for you and your business. Now, all of that to be said, this is as I said, mastermind meets networking. And I really have created this as a community that I want to be something you've never gotten anywhere else. It's not this low ticket membership that you feel like you're paying for, this graveyard of resources that the person has they don't know what to do with. And it's also not that Facebook group that you're inside of that you feel like you get tons of notifications, but you don't really want anything that's inside of it. It all feels surface level. We want to give you the ability to have mastermind meets high level networking all in one place. And the Ambitious Network is where you're going to find that. So, how you can get inside. If you want to go to the show notes beneath, you can click a link to join us inside the Ambitious Network. And if you also want to connect with me on Instagram, I'm also happy to chat with you about it. So, if you DM me the word ambitious, we'll be sure to chat a little bit more about the network for you and give you the link to get inside. So, all of that to be said, I don't want to take any more time away from today's episode. So, without further ado, let's get back into the show. Now, the last piece is nervous system regulation, which is really when a person like yourself will perceive a threat, even if it's just emotional, and the nervous system will shift you into fight, flight, or freeze. So, when people have the idea or the thought of being more visible, growing, having more responsibility, it can actually trigger their emotional state in their body to shut down and not allow you to move forward. This is why we talk so much about nervous system regulation, because if you don't have regulation, you can't keep your body at a baseline to allow you to take scary action without your body feeling like it's truly a threat. And again, remember, our body doesn't know the difference. Your body doesn't know the difference between being chased by a tiger and speaking on stage. Your body doesn't know the difference between being chased by a tiger and upping that price to the level or the price point that you actually want to be charging. So, with knowing all of this, we have to take in these principles to say, I have an awareness now. I know that my programming is part of this. I know that my brain is wired to avoid failure. I know that if my brain does not align my identity of who I think I am with the evidence around me, that it will always default to the identity that I have within my mind. So by having this understanding and by having this clarity, what we can do is we can start to plant seeds and reprogram that, get clarity of the programming and where it comes from, get clarity of what do I believe is my identity today? What is that kind of disconnect between who I believe I am versus the results in my environment? So by understanding this, we can start to take back control. So I want you to ask yourself some of these questions. There's 5 questions here that can be a prompt for you to kind of start the self-reflection process. First being, am I holding back my voice, my ideas, or maybe even my presence because it makes other people more comfortable? This question is really going to help to reveal where you're silencing yourself and actually how that is happening in relationships, how it might be happening with clients, how it might be happening with a lot of different dynamics within your life and business. You can ask yourself, what am I avoiding because it feels too big? It feels too bold. I feel like I'd be too visible. It's too much. Even though I'll be honest, I really want it. This is going to uncover what are hidden desires or hidden fears that you have that are actually the thing that might be blocking your expansion. Asking yourself, am I saying that I'm not quote unquote ready when I'm actually, to be honest, I'm ready. I'm just very terrified and very scared of being seen or judged. This is the question that's going to challenge those of you who have perfectionism, who have this illusion of needing more preparation and, again, more quote unquote control. Ask yourself the question, where am I downplaying my skills, my experience, or value? You'll even see in today's episode that I'm saying I'm still uncomfortable doing this. I'm still working on this. I'm still always in a lot of things that we talk about here, still myself, a work in progress. I've made leaps and bounds from where I started, but I still have a lot of work to do because even I find for myself, this one rings true for me and I'm still working on it. I downplay how good I am because it makes me uncomfortable. So for me, that's something I'm constantly flexing the muscle of to try to stretch myself to get out of that pattern. And last but not least, if I fully believed that I was good enough, that I was as good as other people say that I am, if I really truly embodied how successful I could be, what would I do differently? And so I ask myself a version of this when I'm feeling stuck, which is if I believed all of the incredible things that other people say and believe to be true about me, if I fully embodied that and if I fully believed that to my core, what would I do differently and how would I show up differently? And this is going to shift your perspective from fear to your worth. And it's going to inspire you to take empowered action to start aligning again the action with the identity. And so the thing you'll notice here, especially with this last question, it's not about a matter of you being like, well, I didn't believe I was worthy yesterday and I'm going to believe I'm worthy today. It's not that quick of a switch. But you can play in curiosity and ask yourself, if I was to step into that, if I was to acknowledge for just a moment how great I am, how incredible I am at what I do, the amazing results that I can get for people. If I was to really, really step into her and that embodiment, what would I do differently today? How would I show up differently? How would I take action differently? How would I execute differently? Okay, so 5 questions there to really help you to start to unpack. And as a recommendation, take these, journal on these, allow yourself to sit with these and see what comes up. Because I do this as a practice often to help myself to kind of unlock where even for myself, I am playing small and it's brought up a lot of incredible awareness for me. So, with all this, let's get into some steps about how do we actually change it. If I feel like I now know the symptoms of playing small, I know where it comes from. I have, these reflection questions to see maybe where I could change, where are opportunities that I could start to evolve. How do I actually change this? How do I actually stop playing small? So, the first thing you have to acknowledge, and this is the basis of all change, is you have to recognize that you have a pattern of playing small. You have to actively say, you know what, Kate, I am playing small. And listen, I have said this myself. I have said this to my mentors and I've said, listen, I recognize, for example, after that speaking event I told you about, I was like, I do not see myself the way other people see me. And I need to figure out how to believe in myself and my worth without necessarily having it get to my head or change my heart, was kind of the question that I asked. So it starts with recognizing, and that's because we need the self awareness to be able to have any kind of change. Many people don't realize they're playing small because they just label it as they're not quote unquote ready or I'm just being realistic. And so when we are finally able to label our behavior, it creates this psychological distance from it, right? So you can have the separation finally of I am not somebody who is small, but I can see myself having behaviors that would lead me to play small in business. So, not I am smaller in business or I am a smaller business or I'm not enough, right? That there's an identity there of the person you are. We want to shift that into looking at playing small as a behavior you're doing, right? So, what we shift from is I'm doing this, not I am this, is the reframe that we're looking for here. So, what it's doing is it's allowing and opening the door for you to have new choices. When we add these labels to ourselves, when we believe that we are not enough, it closes doors. Our brain doesn't even go there because it's not going to entertain anything else because it has something already, it's decided as a label that it believes to be true. So, when we remove that label, and instead reframe it as playing small is a behavior, not an identity, it allows us to start to open up to, okay, well, what could be possible? And so you will notice once you start to acknowledge playing small and, acknowledging the way that these behaviors are coming up for you, you're going to start to notice when you're shrinking yourself. Even just being aware of today's symptoms and the awareness of the roots of where they come from, you already now, I will tell you, if you change nothing about the way you move forward after listening today, you will already now in your brain have new awarenesses that you will not be able to unsee. So when you go back into your environment and you have a conversation, let's just say around increasing your price, and you're like, oh no, I can't increase my price. You're like, oop, I remember Kate said that on the podcast and was talking about it. You have this awareness now that is planted in your mind. So it's tapping into that so you can really deepen that awareness that will allow it to become more effective and more impactful for you. So you'll catch yourself most likely with things like I'll wait, or I'm not ready, or who am I to? When you hear those things, that's the trigger for you to say, this is me playing small. I'm not ready to blank is potentially you looking to limit yourself because frankly, it just feels uncomfortable. So the first step we have to look at is being able to catch it, being able to catch and recognize the pattern as it presents. Because just listening today is not going to be the difference of, oh, I used to play small yesterday. I listened to the podcast and don't play small anymore. This is not about me giving you some prescription that poof, you're not playing small anymore. I wish that existed. And if you ever find it, let me know and shoot me a DM. But for me, this is a matter of recognizing and having an awareness because it allows you to constantly adjust and refine in the moment, in action, day after day. So we want to look at that as step one. But step two really is then identifying the root of the fear, identify the root of the belief. What am I really afraid of is going to happen if I show up fully? So like I told you, I had, resistances around what would happen with my friends, how I'd have to be ready to be seen in a different way on the internet through content. What it could mean, for example, for a relationship if I was to go for that really, really big thing that I wanted. And so this really matters because we want to remember that every small thing that we're doing is ultimately trying to protect us from something. It's doing it in the intention of preserving us. And when we identify the fear of where something comes from, it's actually going to reveal to us the limiting belief we have, or potentially even the trauma response that you have underneath it that's keeping you from changing or adopting any new behavior. So, when we actually have an awareness of why we are avoiding, it's going to create leverage that we need to actually create a change. So, instead, when we understand where it comes from, we can start to take more conscious decisions in our life and in our business than the reactive decisions of just whatever our natural response is what we're going to do. Because as I mentioned to you with, again, my programming as a child, if I didn't consciously decide to say, well, where does it come from? What did I believe about money? And what was I raised with as the beliefs of what I was supposed to believe to be true? If I didn't dive into that, it meant that my natural operating system said, hey, money doesn't grow on trees. Money is not available to us. Money is not in abundance. That was my natural programming that came with me into adulthood. So without addressing it, that was going to be my natural reaction. That was going to be my natural response to situations in business. So you want to ideally be able to reflect on the patterns that you have. And it's not about shame, it's not about defensiveness, and it's not about it being right or wrong, or this is what this has done to me. It's just about having an aha moment and realizing, okay, great. This is what I know is my programming. So now that I have an awareness of this, I can choose something differently. I'm going to consciously choose that I don't believe that to be true. I'm going to consciously choose to adopt a different belief or core value in my life and in my business. So as I said, the reflection questions and even, some of the things we've talked about today, the reason I want you to journal on this is just having an understanding of where things come from in itself will be the empowerment to allow you to have a new set of lenses from which you approach the rest of your day to day and the rest of the week of your business, the rest of your month of your business. And as a result, take different actions to support it. So we then look at step 3, which is actually creating a plan, a safety plan, a nervous system regulation type of support for you, which is that we want to recognize if you want to grow within your business, your mind and your body needs to feel safe to grow. It's not just about a strategy. And, I help people with strategies all day, every day. But I will tell you, there are people that self sabotage the strategy that could be insanely impactful for them because they're just not comfortable with the level of how much they're being seen, the level of exposure, the level of what it would require of them as an individual in order to step into that level of success. So it matters because when we make big moves, remember, our body feels it differently and understands it differently than we might know it to be true. Again, remember, being chased by a tiger, not the same as speaking on stage, but our body doesn't know that. So nervous system regulation comes in because it helps your body to stay present, to stay grounded while you're doing things that are very stretchy and that are very difficult. So, even one of the examples being I was getting into doing breath work and I was starting to, tap into this as a tool for regulation. And even breath work was something that, was very stretchy for me. And it is a nervous system regulation tool, but that allowed me in those moments. I was like, listen, I'm safe. You got this. I'm safe. Like, you're fine. It feels uncomfortable. You are fine. And I often, when I get really anxious about things that I'm doing, I will launch something and have nerves around it. I will go to speak and I get really, really anxious beforehand. And now I will tell myself, like, you're going to do great. You're going to go serve people. You're going to go support people in the audience. You're going in and you're making it about them, and everything is fine. At the end of the day, regardless of how this goes, you are enough. And it's giving yourself and giving your mind what it needs to feel comfortable to take action, to feel comfortable to progress. So, when your body feels safe, that is the only time when your brain is actually going to take aligned action. So the thing with, many of us, when we feel anxious, when we feel nervous about something, what does our brain tell us to do? It's like, don't do that. That's terrifying. Don't do that. Don't raise your price. Don't ask to speak on that stage. Don't go say that you'll speak in front of 100 people. No. This is something that's like, no, my body is telling me we are not okay. Do not do it. And it sends your brain signals over and over and over again. No. But instead, when we can regulate our body and say, hey, I hear you, I see you, we're fine, and you take back control, what you're doing is you're giving the body what it needs to tell the brain, let's do it. It allows you to be able to perform regardless of how the emotions in the body feel. You can use nervous system regulation to bring yourself to baseline. And by do that, allow the brain to come to baseline and not prevent you from taking actions that are actually going to support you and your goals. So, when you use these tools like breath work, it could be somatic practices or any of these before big decisions or big actions, you're going to feel calm instead of frozen. You're going to feel calm about, potentially having more visibility or growing more, or tapping into that big goal. And so I want to also invite you that when you have these moments where you're like, I want to go for this big thing, but it scares the crap out of me and I literally feel like I'm going to poop my pants, which also like literally been there, have felt the exact same way. When you feel those moments, it's an invitation to get into your body. You're not going to think away your anxiety. You're not going to think away your stress. So it's a matter of tuning into your body, allowing your body to regulate, and then using your words to help your subconscious brain. And we talked about this in TJ Fry's episode. So if you haven't listened to that about the subconscious brain, I highly recommend it. The TJ Fry episode, he talked about talking to himself. He's like, people talk about the fact that I seem like I'm crazy because I'm talking to myself and saying, thank you. Thank you for the feeling you're giving me. Thank you for bringing this to my awareness. Thank you for XYZ. We sometimes feel weird talking to ourselves, but I do it all the time. I will say, you are safe. You are enough. You deserve this. You are worthy of this. I will tell myself because I have moments just like you where I don't believe it. But by having nervous system regulation and then pairing that with programming my own mind, it allows me to move through those sticking points. They're not necessarily going to go away. They may decrease in the sense of the frequency of them, they might decrease in the sense of the intensity. But even though they might not go away, I can remember that when they come up, that I am still in the driver's seat because I can regulate my body and use that to baseline my mind and give it new thoughts versus what it automatically had as the reaction. Step 4 is you must create stretch goals. You must create things that are a play with possibility, not just what is proven. So you'll often hear me, even when we talked about the quarterly planning, we talk about safe and stretch goals. Safe goals and stretch goals give you this container from which to achieve. So oftentimes, someone who's playing small, if they say, I'm going to go for this big goal, the natural thing that happens is, oh, but I can't do that because I haven't done that before. Or I can't do that because I don't have evidence to say that that's possible. So, what I want you to think about is when we set a stretch goal, it's your play with possibility. And again, this is not to say that you can't set a safe goal, but we're using this as a safe as the floor and the stretch as the ceiling. That's really the basis of how we can allow ourselves to step into something bigger, to step into more achievement. And so that stretch goal that you're setting is also setting a new identity for you. Because if I say to you, double how much you made this year in business, that's your goal for next year. If that makes you feel stretched, if that makes you feel a little uncomfy, or take your current pricing and double it. If that made you uncomfy, that is something that allows you to say, okay, what does that feel like in me? How does that register in my body? What kind of thoughts come up for you if I say to double your revenue next year or double your prices? So, what it does is it gives us a curiosity and an opportunity to step into that new identity. And so, there's actually kind of a nerd side to this. So, I want to share this with you. Why we do this. Neuroscience shows that novelty and challenging the neuroplasticity of your brain, so structure of your brain, you can actually build new wiring for courage, resilience, and creativity. By setting stretch goals, you are literally rewiring your brain to actually create different pathways and different opportunities for possibility as a result of being courageous, resilient, and creative. You're actually creating new neural pathways by setting a new stretch goal for yourself because you're tapping into new possibility and it's causing your brain to create new pathways of possibility and growth and thought patterns and ways of perception of looking at your goal. So when you set goals that feel comfortable, it doesn't really help to stretch you and create new ways of thinking because you're so used to already having those initial pathways of how you think about your goals and how you're going to achieve them. So the ways that you will know that you're actually making progress with this is to set those stretch goals, not live within the safe goals, and you're acting on these ideas. You're taking action in accordance with them. You're not just ruminating on them and thinking about them. And the other piece is also looking at micro action, right? Which is step 5, taking a micro action toward the direction of being bold within business and life. Small steps done consistently have the ability to rewire your brain. And so, boldness in business is not just about like, made this much and now I'm going to just, decide I went from, $5,000, I'm going to make $5 million. It's not about that. It's about taking small intentional steps in your business, in your life that will ultimately allow you to gain confidence and gain evidence around what you're doing. And that ultimately is what we use to build momentum to achieve more and more and more. The thing that I will let you know is that the micro actions are necessary to be able to build that big, big business. If you're playing small, we need to allow you to take small, uncomfy action, not these huge, massive leaps of action, because confidence is not a prerequisite to having a big business. Confidence is something that is a byproduct of action. The reason I am confident in certain areas of my business is not because I was the most skilled at it, it's not because I was the most exceptional at it. It's because I took action and used that to give my brain and my body evidence. Okay, great. We did that. We were uncomfortable. We did it. Here's what happened. Let's move forward. And I'm gathering all this evidence from all the action I'm taking. I'm not going to become confident by thinking about what it would be like to increase my price. I'm going to increase my price, get on a sales call, pitch it, and use that as the confidence to say, I thought it, I felt it, I was scared, I said it anyway, I pitched it. Hey, guess what? It closed. So it helps us to really build up and bypass, frankly, the brain's fear center. It's not about the fact that we will not feel the fear. It's feeling the fear and doing it anyway. And I know this is something people talk about all the time, be scared and do it. But this is not just a, motivational saying. There's literally science to back up that when you feel terrified of something and you feel scared and you act through it anyway, it actually builds that resilience within your mind and it decreases the level of fear. You're able to operate in an environment with fear. I was talking to somebody who was in the military, and I had said to him, when you were in the military, were you still scared? Were you still scared going out every single day? And he said yes and no. There's always an aspect of fear, but the difference between somebody who comes into wanting to go into the military versus someone who's been in it for a couple of years or who's gone through training or boot camp is the fact that they desensitize you to fear. And it's not because they talk about the fear and talk about what's going to happen. They throw you into it. They literally create environments to expose you to fear constantly and allow you to act through it so that you have all that evidence of all those times you were also scared and had to be able to show up and perform. And once you have all these moments you can look at of I was scared then, but I did it. I was scared then, but I did it. I was scared then, but I did it. And you collect all that, when you go out again and again, and you are, out with other peers, you all still are scared, but you have so much evidence to say, I was scared then and I took action. And so you use that action as your evidence to take action that day. And that's the same thing that's true for business. If you are somebody who feels like you have, and this is what I feel has helped me, if you don't have a track record of taking bold action, of course you're scared to take a bold action. At this point, I have taken so many bold actions that I'm like, yeah, I'm scared. Yeah, this is nerve wracking for me. Yeah, this makes me uncomfortable. But I've done a lot of things in my, business and in my life now that were really scary. And I use those as reference points to help me to know that I'm going to be fine and that everything's going to be okay. Even if I feel so uncomfortable and that I could literally crawl out of my skin, I know that when I'm nervous, I tap into, even though I'm doing something brave and I'm doing something bold, I have so much past bold and brave that I can use as my evidence to move forward. Step 6 is we have to rewire the narrative. So update your story of the identity that you've been living in. So your behavior, remember, is going to follow your perception, your identity of yourself. So if you see yourself as someone who is not ready, you will truly take action in accordance with the fact you're not ready. So being conscious of, language we use with our self-talk, affirmations, even using coaching, like mindset coaching, NLP training to create lasting change and become somebody who really has the true identity of the person that you want to become. We've talked about that quote that George Bryant passed along, which was, you don't have the business that you want because you haven't become the person to run it. Oftentimes, you are not achieving the business that you want to have because you actually don't have the identity that you are the person who can have that business. You don't even believe that you could have the level of growth that is possible for you. And because you don't believe it, all your actions are following suit with that. So you have to tell yourself that you are somebody who shows up fully, that you're somebody who is scared but does it anyway. You are somebody who is 3, 2, 1, go. And you acknowledge all the discomfort, but you move and you don't take time, you don't ruminate on it, and you don't just think on it, but you have an awareness of what you think, how you feel, and you go. And so once you start to have this self-talk, you can program. Again, I really recommend you go back to listen to TJ Fry's episode. It's incredible about the subconscious. You can reprogram your brain of who you are. Because if you don't, your brain is just taking evidence from your environment and allowing that to determine who you are. So we can actually rewire who I believe to be and give your brain evidence to shift how you talk to yourself and, most importantly, who you believe yourself to be at the end of the day. And last but not least, which is step 7, reflect and celebrate your wins. What you track grows, and what you celebrate is what will expand. And this is everything. I want you to celebrate a $7 offer being sold. I want you to celebrate a $7,000 sale. I want you to celebrate the fact that you've got DMs that are coming in, a single DM that came in that day. I want you to celebrate the fact that a post you created did well. I want you to celebrate everything small to big. And this is what I see with scaling women is they only celebrate when they feel like they're worthy at a certain level. And even then, there's oftentimes with these massive achievements. I had a client who was going to be like, okay, I'll celebrate when I get to 7 figures. And so I remember we hit 7 figures and I was like, okay, I can't wait to see the way she celebrates this. And she was like, yeah, it's good, but I definitely want more this year. And I was like, whoa, 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 hold up. Give yourself a second to just even calibrate to this level of celebration. When you celebrate your wins along the way, you're creating momentum. You're creating, again, a rewiring within you that actually helps you to see that risk is connected to reward. I repeat, celebrating your wins is helping you on both small scale and large scale to associate that your risk is connected to a reward. So, because of that, the reflection and the acknowledgement of the celebration reinforces you are making progress and it motivates your future action. It motivates taking more action on the things that are scary or more action on things that can make you uncomfortable. So, what this does is the positive reinforcement increases the dopamine within you and it's going to fuel that resilience, it's going to fuel that motivation. So, you want to acknowledge also as well, not just the outcomes, but also who you were and what you did in that instance. So, one of the things that I also really focus on is I acknowledge effort, not just achievement. I acknowledge courage, not just the outcomes. I celebrate momentum that I build over time. So, another thing I want to invite you to is also not just acknowledging the aspect of done, the aspect of achievement, but also acknowledging the process of who you need to be and what you did in the pursuit of that thing. So, today we covered a lot of ground on playing small. We talked about understanding symptoms of is this you? We looked at where does this come from? So where is the root of why we play small and how did I get to be this way and why am I playing small? We looked at reflection questions to help you to journal and reflect on who you are right now, how is this presenting in your business and life, and how you might want to invite that to change. And most importantly, we just went through the 7 steps that you can take and the 7 areas of focus that you can put into action that will help you to start to step into that larger version of yourself, of your business that you know deep down is either who you want to become or what is ultimately possible for you. But you know that you, for some reason, you're getting in your own way. You're playing small in the way you show up in business, you're playing small in the way you're showing up in life, and you're ready to do things differently. So listen, I would love to hear from you. What was something that landed today? One of the things we talk about a lot on Ambitious is that there is such an incredible transformation. It's part of why I do coaching. There's an incredible transformation that happens when you're witnessed in something. So when we have an aha moment and no one else is there to witness us, we can just kind of hide and pretend like that didn't happen. When you're witnessed in it, it actually allows that transformation to register on a deeper level. So what I want to invite you to is to share this. Share this even, potentially with a friend. If you want to slide into my DMs and say, Kate, I listened to this episode and here's what I've realized. Here's how I was playing small. Just even sharing that will allow you to have a deeper acknowledgement and transformation around it. And most importantly, I would love to just hear in general from you in any way, feedback. There's a certain topic that you would love for us to cover. Do you feel like you want a little bit more mindset? You want more strategy? One of the things we love is that we get to talk to you after these episodes. And I love when you guys slide into my DMs. I honestly just I can't tell you how much it fills my bucket to chat with you. It helps us so much to really curate the content that we put onto the show to make sure that it serves you for where you're at right now in your business, in your life, and what we can do to provide either education for myself or from our guests to come on as an expert to give you what you need to help you to tap into that next level you, to really help you to unleash your ambition. So, all of us to say, I hope today was helpful. I hope you took lots of notes. Again, remember your homework is yes, of course, to put these action items into place, but also to remember that those reflection questions are there to help you to go deeper with this level of awareness. So I cannot wait to see you on the next episode. And as always, stay ambitious.